Get ready for a trip back in time to the Middle Ages. Well, prepare your tunic, your family heirlooms, and most importantly, your cart and horse, because we are going to meet one of the most mysterious, full of mysteries and legendary societies in history, the Knights Templar, an order formed by monk knights who fought in the name of Christianity, and about whom rivers of ink have flowed. We are talking about the most powerful Catholic military order of the Middle Ages that forged its legend in the Crusades defending the Christians in the Holy Land, but the one that had a cruelest end. But wait, before you picture monks in thick brown capes and sandals practicing martial arts or fighting in true Zodiac Knight style, let's give some context. It's time to talk about the Templars. In the Middle Ages, Europe was a tough place to live, with Viking invasions terrorizing the coasts and Muslims invading the Iberian Peninsula. Christian kingdoms had their hands full, but eventually they managed to take back control and their power started to increase. Cities regained their Roman Empire's splendor and agriculture and trade flourished. Christianity was in the unifying force which held all the different kingdoms together. Enter the Templars. This group of elite warriors was formed to protect Christian pilgrims and defend the Holy Land. They quickly gained a reputation for their courage and skill, and even their mysterious meetings and rituals. They were the ultimate guardians of the faith and a powerful symbol of the Church's power. The Church was all eyed up by the power of the Christian kingdoms and decided to launch a mission to get back to the Holy Land. Pope Urban II was the first to get things rolling with the rallying cry of Deus vult Dios. Sure, it wasn't as epic as the Spartans' cry, but it was enough to fire up the Christian kingdoms, to sweeten the deal. Urban II even decreed that anyone who joined the mission was free of sin and would receive a free pass to heaven. And with that promise, the campaigns to reclaim the Holy Land began. Thus began the Crusades. The Christian knights who participated wanted to stay and protect Jerusalem and the Christian pilgrims who had been mistreated in the past. As a sign of gratitude, the King of Jerusalem offered them a palace, the Alaska Mosque, as their headquarters. Thus, they became known as the Knights Templar, or to give its full name, the Order of the Poor Knights of Christ of the Temple of Solomon. But with such a cool name, they couldn't just throw parties and play board games. They decided to up their game and protect Christian travelers in the Holy Land. Plus, they had a penchant for looting Muslim enemies here and there, so we guess it was a kind of a win-win. At the beginning, there were only 9 brave founders of the Order of Jerusalem, hardly more than a few people capable of guarding a few pilgrim routes. 9 years later, at the Council of Troyes in 1129, the Templar Order adopted official rules that were to surround the life of a Templar Knight: prayers, clothing, haircuts, weapons, and so on. The news spread quickly and Europe took notice, sending massive donations and recruits eager to become Templar Knights. Thus, the order swelled its strength to hundreds and then thousands of knighty members. These Templars were like a band of highly disciplined warrior monks. Not only did they have no wives or children, but they also lived a sober life with minimal luxuries. They dedicated their life to the service of God, and during the Second Crusade, they formed an elite force, even escorting the King of France. They also played an important role in the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula, and as donations from kings and feudal lords continued to increase, they built many fortresses in the Holy Land in Europe, and acquired much land. They became the first bank in history, lending money to nobles and even to the French crown. The Templar Order had one of the greatest wealth in Europe. They were a bit like the medieval version of Elon Musk. The Knights Templar were clever. They allowed pilgrims to deposit their money in Europe and obtain a letter that allowed the order to pay them when they reached Jerusalem, obviously taking a commission in the process. Basically, they invented the check. Plus, they owned their own ships, traded and made even more money. so they could boast of being the first multinational in history. The Templars were so successful that they began to receive donations and support from all sides. They became something of a military and financial force, with properties all over Europe, and even had a group of knights who swore an oath to them. But like all stories, there is a sad ending. The Templars fell from grace and were persecuted by the King of France. Some say it was for political reasons, others say it was because they were too cool and the king was a little jealous. Either way, the Templars were eventually disbanded and their members persecuted and imprisoned. But what would be this video if we didn't explain the historical background in detail? So get ready, because now is when the story gets interesting, as it mixes stories of heresy, betrayal, politics, hidden societies, and a lord who wouldn't pay his debts. By 1170, the order had landed in what is now France, Germany, the UK, Spain, and Portugal, and their land continued to expand. They even conquered the island of Cyprus, where they won one of their most epic battles and defeated an army of at least 20,000 Saracens, led by Saladin, Sultan of Egypt. The problems began when the Christian and Templar armies were defeated by Saladin's army, who defeated the Templars at the Battle of the Horns of Hattin, and then Saladin took Jerusalem, when the different Christian orders were already at odds. The Templars moved their headquarters to the castle of Acre. In 1291, the fall of Acre took place and the last Templars fought alongside their master, who gave the order to move their headquarters to Cyprus. But the island had to be returned to the English monarch Richard the Lionheart, because its inhabitants did not accept the Templar domination. The order continued its economic work throughout Europe. The Templars remained unaccountable to the kingdoms and did not even have to abide by the laws of the places where they were, although the Templar armies had the power to pass through any territories they saw fit. This freedom caused a growing discontent in the Christian kings, who saw how the issue of the Templars was getting out of hand, to the point that many looked at them with suspicion. The one who hated them the most was the King of France, Philip IV. Surely, this hatred was more than he owed them a lot of money, and was going to do whatever was necessary to avoid having to pay his debt. Pope Clement V summoned the Templar master Jacques de Molay to convince him to merge the Templar order with that of other military monks, but the meeting was a failure. King Philip IV convinced the Pope to initiate legal proceedings against the Templars. Here is the origin of all the black legends surrounding this order, because at the time they were accused of a series of sacrilege and heresies that were based on rumors. However, it was enough for Philip IV to give the order to initiate an operation throughout France against the Templar order, whose sole purpose was to imprison all the knights and confiscate all their property. In fact, this is the origin of relating Friday the 13th to bad luck, since it was precisely on Friday the 13th when this persecution began. At first, the Pope tried to stop the persecution of the Knights Templar, because the trial was rather shady. But 72 knights admitted the sins of their order, which led the Pope himself to order the persecution throughout Christendom. Most of them were forced to confess after being tortured, and even the Grand Master confessed all the alleged crimes. But the Pope decided to give the Grand Master a chance to reconcile with the Church. In a dramatic scene worthy of Hollywood movie, in front of Notre Dame, Jacques de Molay thus sacrificed his life by proclaiming the innocence of the Templars and speaking to the torture they had suffered. He was then burnt at the stake in front of the cathedral on March 18, 1314, and many other Templars were burnt or died in captivity. With the Templars being tried in most countries, they were acquitted everywhere except Portugal. Their assets were confiscated and divided between the state and the Hospitaller order. Many Templars escaped to countries which weren't as influenced by the Pope, such as Switzerland and Scotland. Historians say the Templar regrouped in Scotland, and their rituals and traditions became the origin of Freemasonry. The order continued to exist in hiding, but without any real power in European society. In the 19th century and 1932, various groups of associations have tried to be recognized as the descendants of the Templars, but none of them have had much importance or power. So what do you think? Did the Templars have it coming? Was it fair for the French king to do what he did? Did they really conspire against the Church? And so ends the story of the Knights Templar, a club of knights that started as a joke and ended up being a military and financial force feared throughout Europe. Who would have thought it?